Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. Wind that whispers through the willow trees, sun that sustains us, water that washes over willing earth and weathered stones, a smile shared and savored, a child's squeal of delight as she dances in the daisies and daffodils, the quiet joy of gathered community. This is the spirit of life and love that we call forth now into this gathering. May this spirit infuse our hearts, fill our souls, and carry us forward like a wave on the ocean as we enter now into this sacred time and space. Come, let us worship together. Please join me in singing hymn number 175 in the gray hymnals.
Welcome to First Parish in Milton. My name is Elise Henricks, and I'm a member of the Worship Committee, and I'm the Worship Associate for this service today. Thank you all for being with us this morning, either in the meeting house physically or by way of Zoom. However your journey, whatever your heritage, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. A special welcome to folks who are helping us with the service today. Liz Dunn-Alvarez on the piano. Oh, she's over there. And our AV technician, Bryn Mershon. Thank you so much for being here. In our summer services, we enjoy lay-led preaching and storytelling. This gives us the opportunity to learn from each other's faith journeys and to get to know each other, which strengthens our community. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Lisa White. A special welcome to anyone who is here with us for the first time. There's information for newcomers in your pew, and please introduce yourself after the service. Living our faith happens both inside and outside the meeting house, so there are some announcements that you should have received in your email this week. Just a reminder, next week we will be hearing from Joe Ayub on lessons about basketball, so please join us next week. This time is made holy by your presence. The Zoom chat function will be disabled until the postlude at the end of the service. Please make sure you are on mute until then, and if you're in the meeting house, please silence your phone. Now let us gather our hearts and minds in sacred attention. Each Sunday, we light the chalice as a reminder that even in an increasingly unpredictable and dangerous world, the flame of our faith continues to shine, a corner of warmth and awareness where we, the members of this faith community, can find comfort, support, and connection to one another. Our chalice lighting words today are from Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Please join me in the call to worship. That should be either on your fan or printed on your order of worship. Come, let us gather. We gather to celebrate the sacred within and among us. We come to seek spiritual growth and understanding. We strive to practice acceptance, forgiveness, and love. Together, we work to build a world with justice and compassion. Come, let us gather together.
Jeff and I were sitting on in our backyard yesterday, watching a hummingbird sip nectar from a honeysuckle that we'd planted years ago on one corner of our deck. On the other side of the deck is a large trumpet vine, which usually attracts a Baltimore oriole, which we named Cal Ripken. We haven't seen him yet this year, but I'm still hoping he'll show up. Lots of other birds show up in our yard, to the plants and the many feeders that Jeff keeps well stocked, as well as rabbits, groundhogs, chipmunks, and tons of insects. We love spending time in our backyard watching what happens out there. I was a book editor for 30 years, and for someone who loves books and loves to read, it was a dream job. I edited nature books, field guides, which people use to identify birds, plants, reptiles, rocks, mammals, everything in nature. I edited narratives by birders, a bat biologist, the guy who was responsible for getting David Attenborough 100 feet up in a tree to narrate his documentaries, a lion tracker, and I edited gardening books. I think I lasted 30 years because it was such a good fit for me. Growing up in Florida, I spent a lot of time outside, playing, swimming, hiking, camping, canoeing, gardening. As an adult, though, partly through all the books I worked on and partly from years of observations in our busy backyard, I realized there's a lot more going on in nature than I was aware of back then. How often do you think about all the life that's around you in any given moment? It's not necessarily easy to reach a meditative state where this is possible, but the quieter times brought on by the pandemic at least made it more likely, right? There's a lot to savor once we open our eyes and imagine all the creatures who are sharing a particular moment of being alive with us. Jeff and I have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and we get so much joy from their companionship. I know a lot of you have pets too. Do you ever wonder how our animal friends comprehend the world? Ed Yong, in his current bestseller, An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us, begins his book with a thought experiment. He suggests we imagine an elephant in a large room, like, say, a school gym. Then imagine there's also a mouse, a robin, an owl, a bat, a rattlesnake, a spider, a mosquito, and a bumblebee, in addition to a human. And then he invites us to imagine how the human and the rest of this menagerie might perceive one another. Since we're blessed with the Blue Hills here in Milton, let's substitute them for the school gym. Imagine you're out on a hike. What's going on with you and all these different creatures as you all navigate this rich ecosystem? Well, if there were an elephant, it might try to capture your presence through smell. It would raise its trunk like a periscope to detect you. The rattlesnake flicks its tongue, and the mosquito cuts through the air with its antennae. All three are smelling the space around them. Sorry to say, you'd be of little interest to the elephant. The rattlesnake detects the trail of the mouse scurrying near the path you walk and coils its body in ambush. The mosquito smells the alluring carbon dioxide in your breath and the aroma of your skin. Now let's go to sound. The mosquito lands on your arm ready for a meal, but before it can bite, you slap it away, and that sound disturbs the mouse. It squeaks in alarm at a pitch that's audible to the bat, but too high for the elephant to hear. The elephant, meanwhile, would like to add to the chorus, so it unleashes a deep, thunderous rumble that's too low-pitched for the mouse's ears or the bat's, but is felt by the vibration-sensitive belly of the rattlesnake. Meanwhile, you trudge on in ignorance. You're oblivious to both the ultrasonic mouse squeaks and the infrasonic elephant rumbles. You listen instead to the robin, which is singing at frequencies better suited to our ears. But your hearing is too slow to pick out all the complexities that the bird encodes within its tune. So this goes on and on through sight, touch, all the senses, illuminating how these 10 creatures share the same physical space, but experience it in wildly different ways. Each creature experiences a connection with another organism sharing the moment, but their understanding is limited. Earth teems with sights and textures, sounds, vibrations, smells and tastes, electric and magnetic fields, but every animal can tap into only a small fraction of reality's fullness. Each is enclosed within its own unique sensory bubble, perceiving just a tiny sliver of an immense world. It's probably of no consequence to the animals, but somehow the human is not content with the tiny sliver. When I first read this thought experiment, it made me think of the Buddhist parable of the blind man and the elephant. In the story, a group of blind men who are unfamiliar with what an elephant is come across one, and they learn what it is by touching it. Each man feels a different part of the elephant's body and then describes the elephant based on that limited experience. So the one who feels the side says it's like a wall. The one who feels the tusk says it's like a spear. The ear is like a fan, the trunk like a snake, the tail like a rope, etc. Naturally, they can't agree on what an elephant is, and they even suspect each other of being dishonest. The moral, of course, is that we all have different experiences, and when we find ourselves in disagreement, we should recognize our limitations and leave room for other perspectives. Could that be more you? I first learned this story years ago while teaching spirit play, the curriculum we use for our youngest RE participants. It was always one of the kids' favorites, and I love how well the lesson aligns with so many of our UU principles: justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, a free search for meaning and truth, the worth and dignity of each person. So yes, we all experience the world differently and can't know how others experience it. So it behooves us to not judge others based on only our own experience. Getting back to the animals, they perceive the world differently too. Well, I shouldn't say they, because it's all of us. We're part of nature, not separate from it or above it. If we see ourselves as being apart from nature, we see nature as an other. Then we don't need to consider nature as something we're connected to or something we need to fully understand. We don't have a reciprocal relationship. We can use nature for our own ends without worrying about what effect we have on it. And that's dangerous. When we see ourselves as a part of nature, we're fundamentally connected to it. We're just another species in a larger ecosystem of the natural world. As John Stowe says in Connecting with Nature, that world is rich and vibrant, and you interact with it every moment of your life. With every breath, you take in oxygen produced by the plants. You breathe out carbon dioxide, which those same plants use to grow the leaves that shade you and the roots and fruits that feed you. Every sip of water you drink comes from the same great reservoir stored in clouds and rivers and oceans that supports every other living creature. The foods you eat, the materials used to build your house, the fibers in your clothing, and the cells of your body. Everything you are and everything you have, you share with every other living creature. But being inseparable from nature doesn't mean there aren't differences among us. Again, let's get back to the animals, and let's stick with elephants for the moment, who apparently have a sense of smell far superior to that of dogs, who I'll come back to in a moment. Ed Yong writes about a scientist studying elephants in Kenya. One day, one of her colleagues gave a ride to a couple of Maasai men in a Jeep that the team had used for decades. The next day, when the team drove out, the elephants were unexpectedly cautious around the familiar vehicle. Now, young Maasai men will sometimes spear elephants, and the scientist reasoned that the elephants were disconcerted by the lingering smells of the Maasai in the Jeep, some combination of the cows the Maasai raise, the dairy products they eat, and the ochre they daub on their bodies. To test this idea, she hid bundles of clothes in elephant country. When the animals approached washed garments, or those worn by the Kamba who posed no threat to them, they were curious but unconcerned. But every time they got wind of clothes worn by the Maasai, their reactions were unmistakable. Once the first trunk went up, she says, the whole group ran away as fast as they could, and almost always into long grass. It was incredibly stark, every group, every time. Elephants are also known to dig wells in times of drought, and scientists are pretty sure they're using the smell of water underground to do so. I guess we could use some elephants around here right now. Smell might also contribute much more to navigation than we've realized. For example, it turns out that polar bears might be able to navigate across thousands of miles of indistinct ice because glands in their paws leave scent behind with every step. And seabirds may use their noses to find their way home. One scientist transported some Cory's shearwaters to locations 500 miles from their nesting colonies and temporarily shut down their sense of smell with a nasal wash. Unpleasant sounding for the birds, but when they were released, the birds struggled to travel home, taking weeks or months to do what normal shearwaters did in mere days. Without smell, they had lost their way. Now, to be completely honest, I don't love snakes, but I do find this really cool. The reason snakes have forked tongues is probably to smell in stereo by comparing chemical traces at 2 points in space. If a snake is on a trail and both tips of the tongue detect trail pheromones, the snake stays on course. If the right tip gets a hit, but the left one doesn't, the snake veers right. If both come up empty, it swings its head from side to side until it gets back on the trail. The fork allows the snake to precisely define the edges of the path. Let's say a timber rattlesnake is slithering over the forest floor. Its tongue reveals the crisscrossing tracks of scurrying rodents and discerns the scents of different species. Among those tangled trails, it can pick out those of its favorite prey and find the places where the tracks are common and fresh. It hides nearby, and when a rodent runs past, the snake explodes outward 4 times faster than a human can blink. It stabs the rodents with its fangs and injects venom. Now, the toxins usually take a while to work, and since rodents have sharp teeth, the snake avoids injury by releasing the prey and letting it run off. After a few minutes, it starts flicking its tongue, which of course it can smell with, to track down the victim, which by now has died and is no danger to the snake. Dinner is served. Speaking of eating, reptiles, birds, and mammals taste with their tongues, but not all animals do. Most insects can taste with their feet and legs. Bees can detect the sweetness of nectar just by standing on a flower. Flies can taste an apple just by landing on it. And to a mosquito, human skin has a taste to it, which confirms to the mosquito that it has landed in the right place, and which is why DEET works. DEET tastes bitter to mosquitoes, and if an arm is covered in it, the receptors on their feet force them to take off before they get a chance to bite. The record holders for taste, though, are catfish. They have taste buds spread all over their bodies. There's hardly a place you can touch a catfish, if you wanted to, without brushing thousands of taste buds. Sadly, though, they can't taste sugar, and this is apparently not uncommon among animals. Cats, hyenas, and many other mammals that eat only meat lack a sweet tooth. Vampire bats, which drink only blood, also have no taste for sweetness or for umami. Songbirds are an exception, though, as you might know if you ever feed jelly, orange slices, or nectars to cardinals, robins, orioles, and hummingbirds. That's just smell and taste. I haven't touched on all the other senses, but you get the idea. If you want more, I highly recommend Ed Yong's book, An Immense World. In the meantime, I did promise to return to our best friends, dogs, who can sniff 6 times a second, and we know they can smell better than we humans can. That's partly because of the shape of their nostrils. When you see a dog sniffing a patch of ground, you might imagine that every exhalation would blow smells on the surface away from the nose. But that's not what happens. The next time you look at your dog's nose, notice that the front-facing holes taper off into side-facing slits. When the dog exhales while sniffing, air exits those slits and creates rotating vortices that waft fresh odors into the nose, so that even when breathing out, a dog is still sucking air in. In one experiment, an English pointer created an uninterrupted inward airstream for 40 seconds, despite exhaling 30 times during that period. So it's no wonder that dog noses are incredibly sensitive. Whether we're comparing the experiences of exotic creatures like elephants and polar bears, or our own cats and dogs, we can't deny that we're animals too. We're a part of nature, a part of the interdependent web of all existence, as our 7th principle tells us. And we're just one species among many, with a vast array of skills, aptitudes, and abilities, leading to a multitude of ways of experiencing the world. If we look at that idea within the human realm, it's not hard to believe that the world would be a better place, more peaceful, happier, calmer, if, rather than making assumptions, we instead give everyone the benefit of the doubt and have compassion for those who see, smell, hear, feel, taste, and think differently from us. How any one of us experiences the world isn't necessarily the absolute truth and the only way. And we may think we're in touch with nature and that we know a lot about what's going on around us, but we have only an inkling of all the life that's out there. So the next time you're out, walking in the Blue Hills, in your own backyard, or anywhere else in nature, think of yourself as one of those blind men. You may catch some of the sights, sounds, and smells around you, the daisies turning their petals toward the sun, the wind whispering through the willow trees, the salty air of the ocean. But realize that you're appreciating only a very small slice of what's going on. The animals and even other humans are experiencing it differently, and that's okay. Please join me in singing hymn number 21 from the Gray Hymnal, for the beauty of the earth, and stand as you're willing and able. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this earth, our home, for the wide sky and the blessed sun, for the salt sea and the running water, for the everlasting hills and the never-resting winds, for trees and the common grass underfoot. We thank you for our senses by which we hear the songs of birds and see the splendor of the summer fields and taste of the autumn fruits and rejoice in the feel of the snow and the smell of the breath of the spring. Grant us a heart wide open to all this beauty, and save our souls from being so blind that we pass unseeing when even the common thorn bush is aflame with your glory. Amen.
Today's offering is dedicated to the services and ministry of First Parish in Milton. It's easy to give. Simply text to 617-539-7576, which you'll see on the screen. If you're coming to us virtually, text the amount you'd like to give, and you'll get some instructions if it's your first time. For those of you who are in the meeting house, if you'd prefer to leave a cash or check in the offering plate is back there by the front door. If you're proud of this church, become its advocate. If you care about its future, share its message. We welcome all to build a just and healthy world with faith, love, and compassion. This vision is brought alive by your presence, your participation, and your support. Please support this faith community by giving as generously as you can.
Bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas like the monkeys do. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. Put me in the pouch of a kangaroo. No, I'm not covered with fur, and I don't stink, and I don't breathe underwater, 'cause the good Lord knows I sink. La 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 la. And you never guess from just what you see, but you gotta face it, mama, there's a beast in me. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. My mother and my brother and my cousins too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. Squawking all night like a cockatoo. Now I don't live in a tree, and I can't fly, and I don't need buzz, but mama knows I tried. La 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 la. And when I see a big tiger and the chimpanzees, I recognize something that's inside of me. Oh, we like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We wanna run like the rhinos do. Well, I'm an antelope, and I'm a billy goat, and I'm a porcupine, and I'm a crocodile, and I'm an octopus, platypus, jaguar, grizzly bear. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We like bazookas, we're animals too. We wanna do like the monkeys do. We like bazookas, we're animals too. 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 Antelope, billy goat, porcupine, crocodile, octopus, platypus, jaguar, grizzly bear. Antelope, billy goat, porcupine, crocodile, octopus, platypus.
Oh, please rise for our doxology. May these gifts be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity.
Please be seated. Like the cosmic dust following after a great Perseid meteor, we are the living remnants of time and all that has come to pass in its wake, briefly shining lights on the way to eternity. We are only visible to the naked eye for an instant. Take this moment to shine like the stardust you are. May the light of our time on earth shine to bless the world and each other. Shine, shine, shine.
Go on, say hi. No one's on yet. Hey, Robert.
Buongiorno.
Hey, buona giorno, India.
You
Diane.
guys are in the same place.
We are.
What is it?
We're in the same place as opposed to do two different computers.